Hello everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we shall learn terrible sonnet, Inscape, Sprung Rhythm, and obviously poet Gerard Manley Hopkins. So, those who have not yet subscribed my channel, please subscribe, share, and share among your friends, and press the notification button so that you don't miss the update from my end. So let us start. First, let us let us get familiar with the poet Gerard Manley Hopkins from 1944 to 89. G.M. Hopkins is a great religious poet of 20th century. He wrote poetry in the 1870s and 1880s, but not published until 1918. In his poetry, God, religion, nature, beauty recur unpleasant time. Nature, Hopkins believes, is the manifestation of God, and nature alone is true, and the appreciation of nature is religion. You know, Hopkins was much ahead of his time. He was an innovator. So Hopkins G.M. Hopkins an innovator, INNO, innovator, an experimenter, and an unique figure in the history of English poetry. So, Hopkins is an innovator, an experimenter, and an unique figure in the history of English poetry. He experimented with poetic form, meter, poetic language, rhythm, technique, and style, and in this regard, he was quite successful. He experimented with poetic form, meter, rhythm, style, technique, and he was quite successful in this regard. So, and his poetry greatly influenced the later poets such as T.S. Eliot, Dylan Thomas, Cecil D. Lewis, Stephen Spender, W.H. Wooden, and many more. He was a great innovator of sprung rhythm. You know, he is the great innovator of experimenter, great innovator, and unique figure. Before 1918, his poetry, known only to a small circle of friends, including Robert Bridges, who eventually published his poetry. So it is Robert Bridges. Robert Bridges, Robert Bridges, his friend, and he also a great poet and poet laureate of England. Robert Bridges published his poetry after his death. Posthumously, Robert Bridges published Hopkins' poetry and made them public, and he came to know to the public. So before 1918, his poetry was only known to a small circle of friends. Hopkins has caused critics great difficulty in categorizing him for his formal experimentation and his highly personal theory of sprung rhythm and Inscape. In some anthologies, he is classified as a modern 20th century poet. In other, he is classified as a late Victorian poet. In a word, we can say that chronologically Hopkins was a Victorian, but technically a modern poet. So, chronologically, 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 Hopkins was a Victorian, but technically, 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 he is a modern poet. Modern poet. Chronologically, Hopkins is a Victorian, but technically he is a modern poet. So now come to the terrible sonnet. Terrible sonnets. Terrible sonnets are those sonnets in which the poet articulates his deepest agonies of despair at a world which is a spiritual wilderness. So, terrible sonnets, terrible sonnets are those sonnets in which the poet articulates his deepest agonies of despair at a world which is a spiritual wilderness. Spiritual wilderness, spiritually hollow, the hollow man. So this is terrible sonnets. And Hopkins, in a sequence between 1885 and 1886, wrote six sonnets that can be grouped as terrible sonnets. And the terrible sonnets he wrote are: one, to sing the stranger; number two, I wake and feel; number three, patience; number four, my own heart; number five, carry on comfort; carry on comfort; and number six, no worst there is none. No worst there is none. So these are his terrible sonnets he wrote in a sequence between 1885 and 1886. So this is terrible sonnets. And in this context, one should not forget to mention another sonnet form invented by Hopkins, and that is Cartel sonnet. Curtl, Cartel sonnet. Cartel means shortened, abridged. So, Cartel sonnet is a sonnet of 11 lines, or to say more accurately, 10 and a half line sonnet. So, Cartel sonnet. Cartel sonnets. 11 lines sonnet. 11 line sonnets, or to say more accurately, not 11 lines actually, 10 and a half lines. And the rhyme scheme of Cartel sonnet is rhyme scheme, rhyme scheme, rhyme scheme A B C A B C D C B D C, or the second part, or another rhyme scheme is used for the second part is DBCDC. DBCDC. So that is the rhyme scheme of Carter sonnet. Our next concern is Inscape, Hopkins' own theory, personal theory that is associated with poetic form, and that is Inscape. Inscape. What is Inscape? So Inscape and interest are complementary, and it is an enigmatic concept about the individuality and the inner pattern of an object and experience and happenings, and that Hopkins explores in his poetry, and with sprung rhythm makes his poetry unique and different from others. So Hopkins' personal theory, Inscape. Inscape, Inscape or interests are complementary. It is it is an enigmatic concept, enigmatic concept of concept about the individuality and inner pattern of an object, experience, happenings that Hopkins explores in his poetry, and that with sprung rhythm makes his poetry unique and different from others. Different from others. So, Inscape, the inner design, the beauty, inner beauty of an object or a thing or a experience. So, by uh, Hopkins tries to capture this inner pattern and he termed it uh, Inscape. So his poetry has similarity with the metaphysical poets of 17th century in thought and passions. And sorry for that I have forgotten to give you an example of cartel sonnet. The example of cartel sonnet is Hopkins' three poems which are or Pied Beauty and poem Pied Beauty and As Bows Peace. These poems of Hopkins are example of cartel sonnets. So our next concern is, or the final concern is sprung rhythm. Sprung rhythm. What is sprung rhythm? Sprung rhythm. Sprung rhythm. Sprung rhythm. It is Hopkins who introduced sprung rhythm into English poetry. Fit, in which the first syllable is stressed and may be followed by a variable number of unstressed syllables. That a stressed syllables, first a stressed syllable, then followed by, but not necessary, uh, will be followed by unstressed syllables. It is Hopkins' prosody, and he first used it in his poem The Wreck of the Deutschland in 1876. So it is Hopkins who introduced sprung rhythm into English poetry. What is sprung rhythm? Fit, metrical fit, in which the first syllable is stressed and may be followed by a number of followed by a variable number of unstressed syllables. Syllable or syllables. So within bracket is syllables. It is Hopkins' prosody. He used he in his the wreck of the Deutschland. 1876. The Wreck of Deutschland. The Wreck of Deutschland first used it. So, in his The Wreck of the Deutschland, he first used the sprung rhythm. The sprung rhythm, metrical fit, in which the first syllable is stressed and may be followed by unstressed or unstressed syllables. Unstressed syllables. So this is all about our today's video from G.M.Hopkins to sprung rhythm. G.M.Hopkins first, then table sonnet, cartel sonnet, Inscape, his theory of Inscape, his concept of Inscape, and finally sprung rhythm. So this much for today's video, and if it seems to you that it is helpful, then please subscribe my channel, share it among your friends, and touch the notification button so that you never miss an update from my end. So thank you.